Launching fiction on Railroad is daunting. Will anyone read my story? Am I a good enough writer? Have I done enough to promote it? There are an endless amount of questions you could ask yourself, but at some point, you need to jump in. So here I go. Let's find out if the water's fine or if I've gotten in over my head. Glub glub. For starters, how am I feeling? Full transparency? You gotta let me work. Why? Why do you do that? For starters, how am I feeling? Full transparency? Pretty stressed out. This is a scary step in my journey. I really don't know how it's going to turn out. I feel like I've been overly preparing, but now in this put up or shut up moment, I don't feel ready. I think that's natural and part of the creative process. It's almost impossible to evaluate our own work objectively, but you have to try. I also need to celebrate the hard work that I've put in. I've agonized over the writing, the editing, how I'm going to market my book, and I'm excited to see what kind of reaction there will be. This all just feels too real all of a sudden. So please be generous with your encouragement. You gonna calm down? You gonna settle down, Tamby? One thing we can turn to in a time of need like this is a handy-dandy guide. I've shown sections of Think Twice's amazingly comprehensive guide in prior videos. What I'm referencing now is part 2. This section focuses on what you need to do to get onto the Rising Stars list, which is where I'm at. Think Twice boils success down to 4 key elements: your cover, your title, your genre/tags, your synopsis. I'll link the guide in the description so you can take a closer look if you'd like. But for now, I'm going to focus on how those 4 elements apply directly to me. Let's start with my cover. Last video I mentioned that ultimately I decided I was going to use a pre-made cover, at least for now. I found mine on the Cover Collection. There's a variety of options. You can pick one and then get exclusive rights to it. They cost £85, which is roughly $120. Here's the one I picked. While the imagery isn't comprehensively evocative of my story, it comes close enough. It has some themes that tie in. I think it's eye-catching, and it will work well as a small thumbnail, which is how most people will see it. You settling down now? You gonna settle down? Gonna give me less of a hard time? Thanks, Tamby. Part of what made me think this was a good match is the temp title actually works very well for mine. The Witch's Weave will fit exactly in this space. Even Aisha Bray is about the same number of characters as W.P. Ogilvy. So I put in my order through PayPal, filled out a brief form of how I wanted my text to read, and after a bit of a delay waiting for an e-check to clear, I got some options from Debbie at the Cover Collective. She sent me 5 font options, but these are my top 3. I also requested that the orange be made a little darker and had to pay a bit extra for that, but I was happy to do that. I prefer the results. Part of what's causing stress for me is I have to make a lot of decisions. Initially, I preferred the font of the first option since it was the same as the sample, but the second one really grew on me. I think it has just the right amount of flourishes. My main concern was that the author name and the subtext didn't quite look right. What I ended up deciding on was option 2, with the subtext of option 1. I think it's the best of all worlds. But let me know what you think. Which one caught your eye the most? Now that I've locked into cover, what's next? Since your title is often going to be a part of your cover, I kind of question the order of these steps. Currently, I feel positive about my title, so I'm going to move on. How about my genre and tags? I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, so I have a pretty good idea of where my book lands. It's progression fantasy with multiple lead characters. When you submit a fiction for review on Railroad, you get a lot of options for these tags, so I'm glad I decided ahead of time which ones I would pick. This could be an overwhelming list. Submission involves assigning your cover art, including a synopsis, choices for content warning. I selected graphic violence and profanity for my story. I might include sensitive content as well. I'm on the borderline for that. I clicked the manual release option so I could launch my story on this video. You then put in the name of your first chapter and the content of your first chapter. I submitted my story yesterday and it took less than 24 hours for it to be approved, but it could take up to 48 hours, so plan accordingly. I can't edit the submission anymore, but you can see I have the cover art in place, the name, and the synopsis. So let's launch. Here we go. It's alive! Let's go through some of this in detail. As I mentioned, look at the book cover. It's tiny. Any highly detailed art is going to be nearly invisible. I can't even click to make that bigger. As far as the synopsis, this is where all the preparation I did to prepare for querying an agent comes in very handy. I've been thinking about my book in this kind of way for a long time now. Whether or not I'm good at writing a synopsis is a totally different question, but I feel confident I did the best I could for the time being. I tried to catch the reader's attention, introduce the characters, and tease some hooks of the story. I wanted to make it abundantly clear that this is a multi-POV story. There's a sizable amount of readers, especially on Royal Road, who do not want to read multi-POV stories. I'd love if they gave my story a try, but I'm not going to trick them into reading it. In terms of setting expectations, I then got pretty explicit. What to expect. Epic adventures that call to mind the highs of an immersive D&D campaign, multi-POV storytelling, and memorable characters. Progression fantasy that's measured, aiming to make growth feel earned. That entry felt important because some other stories move very quickly. My book has plenty of action, but it's not a breakneck pace. And finally, I include my release schedule. When you're starting out, I think it's important to encourage readers that you are dedicated to this and you have a plan. It would feel terrible if you got incredibly invested in a story and then the author just stopped writing. Here I can guarantee an entire book worth of content, and maybe I should mention that too. One thing I want to update is including some tags in the actual title. I also forgot some periods. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I can always come back and tweak my synopsis later. From what I found looking at other successful examples, the synopsis is important, it should be clear, but it's not going to make or break your story. The last thing I need to consider in respect to the presentation of my book on Royal Road is the chapter name. I opted for Introductions to the Cast. I should probably change that to something a little more engaging, but it's a decent placeholder. The reason I chose that name is this first chapter shares a lot of POVs. I wanted the reader to immediately know they were engaging with a multi-POV story, and I also wanted to avoid something that I found as a reader. Typically in a multi-POV book, you'll spend long chapters getting slowly introduced to the world and the characters. That approach obviously works, it's tried and true, but I wanted to try something a bit different. What if instead, you got a taste of all the primary characters and then immerse yourself more deeply in their individual arcs? I have a header with the character name, their chapter, and then a page divide, which I think worked out well. Formatting was super easy. It automatically translated my manuscript, which was a big relief. The only formatting concern I have, these long paragraphs may not work well on mobile, and that's how a lot of people read Royal Road. I may want to experiment with breaking them up a bit more. All in all, I feel very good about things so far. I have 4 more chapters I need to upload to hit that 20,000 word count. By the time you're seeing this, those should all be live as well. A sizable chunk of the book for people to dig their teeth into. How are you doing, Tandy? Doing okay? Hey, sweet lady. My biggest task now is outreach. I need to be active on the forums, I should be posting on Reddit, Facebook has groups I should join, and Discord has a huge community for writers. I'm going to spend the next few days promoting my book through those channels. It's not my favorite activity, but it's a necessary evil. It's part of the game. I stumbled across this Reddit post by Fallow, and I think it's a great template for the kind of things that I can do. Fallow writes, "It's been about 13 days since I started uploading on Royal Road, and I thought I'd share what I've been doing so far, partly to keep myself accountable, partly to help other new authors, and also because I'd love to hear advice from people who are further along." What's so great about this post is it does a lot of things simultaneously. It brings attention to Fallow's story, it engages the community, and it fosters relationships with other authors. Fallow mentions that activity on the forums has been especially effective, and adding a story link in your signature is a great way to generate attention. What they haven't tried yet, and I haven't either, is shout-out swaps, where ideally you find a more established author who'll give your book a nudge by sharing it with their fanbase. Like when Fallow was just starting out, I don't have a lot to offer other authors in terms of promotion. I mean, I have this wonderful YouTube channel, but currently on Royal Road, I really have no clout. Review swaps are another step that I'm going to hold off on. Unless I'm just getting no interaction, I don't think review swaps make sense. Apparently the user base has soured on them a bit. So I'm going to focus on driving engagement to my story through posting on various platforms, with the goal of trying to reach the Rising Stars list. That'll help get a lot of eyes on my story, and in turn, that'll help me promote other authors, making the trade more fair for a shoutout. I'm going to start reaching out to them now. Since some authors have a huge backlog of obligated shoutouts, I want to get on that now to avoid scheduling difficulty. My strategy is I only want to find authors who are writing multi-POV works, so I can promote within that community. I think one of their readers is a much better target than the general public of Royal Road. And I think most of my posts on the forums will be about multi-POV works, feeding into that intention. For example, this thread about writing a novel with multiple characters is perfect. I can engage directly with any of these posts, or with any of these authors. In fact, 2 of these stories already stood out to me, Farian's Winter and The Heretical Dig. Both of these provide an opportunity to see what's working, what's not, and how the community's engaging with multi-POV fiction. And finally, checking back in with Fallow, they have another relevant post. They made it to Rising Stars. Congratulations. Again, this is a great way to celebrate, to help others, and to bring attention back to the story. I need to be more like Fallow. I gotta admit, I'm feeling a bit better. Thanks for listening and for your support. Now that I've set this engine in motion, I need to keep writing, and I need to make sure I'm doing what I can to promote my story. Depending how that goes, I'm either going to continue with a soft launch approach, but if things really kick off, I'm going to consider ads and other things of that nature. The marketing might get out of hand quickly. No matter what happens, it's going to be an adventure. You ready for an adventure? Cute girl.